So, who is up for travel? I know that I am. Haven't traveled overseas for a little while now, so I'm really keen to get back. So what this video is going to be about is my definitive guide for the first time that you go to Japan. So strap yourself in. Here we go. So just as an introduction, my name's John Davidson. Welcome to the awesome life of JD. So what I'm going to talk about is an overview of the first time you want to go to Tokyo, to Japan. Tokyo has a population of 38 million people. Okay, it's hard to wrap your head around that, but it's an incredible place. I've been there many, many times. So what we do is we plan. The first thing we do, passport. If you've got no passport, you ain't going anywhere, all right? And right now, with the pandemic on, we ain't going anywhere either. So I think there'll be a bit of a wait time on getting passports when all of this is over and we're clear to actually travel. For short stays of less than 90 days in Japan, you don't need a visa. So in Australia, we just have our passport, book our tickets, and book accommodation and so on, and we're there. So the basics in planning are passport, booking your hotel. I usually do that through just online via booking.com. That's normally what we use. And make sure that the hotel or hotels that you use have the option of cancelling the booking with no penalty within a short time frame. I completely understand that, you know, if you book it the day, but if you cancel it the day before, you might incur a fee. But the way we normally do it is we go through booking.com and there's no cancellation fees up to about 3 or 4 days beforehand. So really, really vital in that. And we'll talk about hotels and where to stay shortly. Another thing that you need to book if you are planning on going on the Shinkansen or bullet train is your bullet train tickets. It's a lot cheaper actually to book a bullet train for a foreigner. So if you are a Japanese national, we actually get very good rates compared to the citizens of Japan. So I normally do that through a company called Klook, K-L-O-O-K, and they've been fantastic to deal with. We had to cancel our trip, obviously. We were looking to go there in April 2020. Obviously that was not going ahead due to the pandemic. So cancelled everything. So it was really easy to get a refund through Klook. There was a small processing fee, but I was happy to pay that because it's a small price to pay with the state of the world as it was in at the time. Just had something really spicy for dinner, so excuse my voice. You can actually buy bullet train tickets when you get over there. It's been relaxed somewhat, and you can buy them for 3 days, 5 days, 7 days, all sorts of different days. We'll talk about the length of time for traveling to Japan as well, the sweet spot of travel to Japan. And I'll do that right now actually. We've been there before with a whole family, and we did that for about 15 or 16 days. That was very long. We came to the conclusion very early into our first trip over there that we will be back, and we went 6 months later with a few less kids. Don't make the mistake of trying to see everything in one trip, because you will not. You will not see a fraction of even Tokyo. So what I do is I go there at least every year, and I do it for 9 nights. I've got this down to a formula that's so precise that I even know what day of the week I leave and what day of the week I come back. So in my experience, I'd leave from my home airport, Brisbane Airport, on a Tuesday morning. Tuesday morning at the plane leaves at 8:55. Gets to Tokyo around 5:30, 5:45. So you're traveling the whole day. And why I do that is because the first time we went there, we flew through the night, got there at about lunchtime, and our hotel obviously wasn't ready because of the check-in and check-out times. So we had some grumpy kids and we had to sit in the hotel lobby for a number of hours because we were quite tired. And one of our kids has autism, and he didn't have a very good flight over. So we just wanted to sit in the hotel room. So I thought the next time I come, I will go to Tokyo and get there when the room is ready. So I can just get there, get into the hotel, have a shower, have a rest or whatever. Which brings me to getting to the airport. What I normally do when I go on a holiday anywhere is that I know that I've worked really hard during the year. And so to make me feel like I've accomplished something really good is that I book a limousine from my house to the airport. Limousines in Australia are generally a nice car rather than one of those stretch things that school kids pay $5 each for and see how many people they can cram in. It's just a nice, roomy, large car like a Statesman, like a Holden Statesman or a BMW or a Mercedes. So they don't cost that much more than a taxi, and it's just a really good way to start the trip. So we get to the airport. What we do then is prior to going, or sometimes when we are at the airport, I only get out a few $100s. And the reason behind that is that usually when you're in Japan, the rates, the currency conversion rates that you get are much better than the airports here. The airports here seem to think that they have a monopoly on everything. You know, you buy a can of drink there and it's $5 or whatever. Similarly, you get ripped off with currency conversion. So I try to take as little money or cash from here as possible, and I wait until I get over there. So sometimes people, you know, need to have a lot of money, need to have a lot of cash, Japanese yen in this case, but I normally get less than $100 because I know that I can get money as soon as I get there. So the flight normally will fly into Narita Airport, which is about 90 minutes drive outside of the greater area of Tokyo. Sometimes you will get into Haneda Airport, but that's generally if you travel with Singapore Airlines or Cathay Pacific, but generally Singapore Airlines. Now, just a note on who to travel with. I've traveled to Tokyo via Qantas, the Australian airline, Cathay Pacific, and that goes via Hong Kong, and Singapore Airlines, which obviously goes via Singapore. The latter two, while their aeroplanes and their service are exceptional, the latter two is sheer folly going that way. From now on, I go to Japan via Qantas or Virgin or Jetstar or whoever can get me there in one leg. Flying somewhere and sitting around an airport for a few hours in Hong Kong or Singapore doesn't make any sense at all. So always, from an Australian perspective anyway, I fly Qantas because they have a non-stop route and you get there in one leg. So it's generally around eight and a bit hours from Brisbane anyway. So what do you take? I have learnt by sad experience on this one, ladies and gents. I take at least two things. And the first thing is carry-on bag. Generally, that's something that I have a camera in and passport, and I've had so many other things, but this is probably the best thing. This is something I prepared earlier. You might think this looks really small, but it extends. So this is like a messenger bag satchel thing, and it's from Montbell, which is a Japanese version of Kathmandu or LL Bean, outdoor sort of suppliers. And it's got a aftermarket strap and an air cell, so it's quite comfortable. And remember, you've only got a 7 kilo carry-on bag capacity. So these are the things that you need in that bag. 1, passport. 2, tickets. Anything to do with ticketing, like an itinerary, that sort of thing. 3, perhaps airsick medication if that's your thing. It's not my thing. Panadol. Number 4 is a shell jacket, some sort of a warm jacket that fits into not very much space. So it might even be a down jacket that you roll up, because aeroplanes are always the temperature that you don't want them to be. They're always a little bit too cool. Sometimes they're a little bit too hot, but generally they are always a bit too cool. So I always have that with me. And finally, I usually, seeing that I'm getting a bit thin on top, I always have a baseball cap or some sort of a hat as well, just so my head doesn't get too cold. And particularly when you go there in the cooler months, you will need something on your head when you get outside of that airport, because it can get pretty chilly. The final things is just minor things, like chewing gum, if that's your thing. It's not my thing, but eyeglasses, just so you can watch the entertainment on the flight, sunglasses, that sort of thing. Everything else goes in the bag, the cabin baggage that goes underneath. So when I mean cabin baggage, I mean your suitcase. And when I mean your suitcase, never, ever, 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 ever take a big suitcase with you, because you will fill it up, and there's a 23 kilo baggage limit, and it's not hard to fill a bag that's that big with 23 kilos. I normally have the medium-sized ones, and I try to put as little in there as possible, because I do know that, you go places, you'll be bringing certain things back. You might buy some new running shoes or some clothes or some camera accessories or whatever. So I try not to take too much over, the bare minimum. And I've done it, and I've got it down to a fine art, believe me. People who want to take a book with them, that might be your thing. I've taken a book with me, and I have never opened it. Never opened it the whole trip, never opened it on the plane ride over. So it's just extra weight that you have to carry around, and something less that you can bring back. All right. So, I've done this so many times, and I've just learnt that that's the way to do it. Cameras, I generally take a camera with me, but I think I've said in videos past that from now on I'll just be taking a phone. And speaking of phones, I do take a backup phone as well. And the reason for that is I have one on me that's turned off. The data is turned off on my phone, so you don't get a huge internet bill when you get back, but people can still ring you. Particularly if my wife and I go overseas and our son is in respite care back in Australia. If they need to contact us for anything, an emergency or a query about medication, that sort of thing, we need to be eminently contactable. But the second thing, you don't know your way around. And the best thing by far is maps. Having Google Maps on your phone is absolutely essential. So I've got a backup phone, and it's quite a large one. It's a Samsung S9 Plus, and it's quite large. So I'll just get a SIM card, Japanese specific SIM card, usually through SoftBank or Docomo, and whack that in, and you've got a Google Maps, and internet. Absolutely fantastic. Some of the hotels that you stay in actually offer you a Mirror phone, and that's a phone that comes complimentary with the hotel. You can put the apps on it that you want, and once you have left the hotel and your stay has concluded, everything on that phone wipes. And it's really good. I've done that once and people said, oh, you know, you'll be hacked, you'll be this, you'll be that. I haven't had anything happen. Okay, so that's one option. That doesn't happen with every hotel though. That's quite a rarity. But taking 2 phones with you, I think that's the way to go. And obviously the chargers and the specific socket that will convert your country's charger to Japanese. Luckily, we are fairly similar in volts, but the pins are a little bit different. So just go to somewhere like an Outdoor Fitter or Daiso, that sort of thing. Should be able to get a really good deal on those. So when you get there, you've flown into Narita Airport and you're greeted by the most polite yet hectic. It's quite hectic, but everyone is very polite, and make sure that you fill out your declaration in full with a pen. Don't try to get away with using a pencil. They'll find out and they'll get you to redo it. Very politely, they'll get you to redo it. But everything has to be done perfectly. Otherwise, they'll get you to redo it. When you do get to Narita Airport, generally it'll be fairly late in the afternoon, early evening, and you'll be thinking, how do I get from the airport to my hotel? There are 2 ways. The first way is the best way, and just trust me on this, it's the best way. Airport limousine bus is the best way, particularly if you're on the route of the bus that goes to or near your hotel. They've worked it out that there are only a set number of routes that get within a short walk or to the front door of pretty much every major hotel in Tokyo. The second option is the Narita Express. We've tried that before, and we've done that with luggage and kids, and navigating large train stations. Navigating large train stations with lots of luggage is a complete nightmare. So that's the main reason that I wouldn't do it again. It's very similar price to the airport limousine bus anyway. And when I mean limousine bus, I mean like a modern Greyhound type coach, and they put all of your luggage underneath. I'm normally towards the end of the line when you go into Tokyo, and it takes about 90 minutes. Very dark, you can't really see much when you're driving in because Narita Airport is out in the countryside. It's a long way out. And suddenly you sort of come over the hill through sort of rainforests and that sort of thing, and you see the lights of Tokyo. It's absolute. All right, the third option that I won't even go into that much is taxis. Taxis in Tokyo are great, but taxis from Narita Airport to Tokyo are not a very good idea. Very, very expensive. So cost prohibitive for one person, probably okay for about 3 people, but anything over that, you won't fit your luggage in the trunk or the boot of the taxi. So that's something to consider. The taxis over there are just the size of they're square, and they're old-fashioned, but they're new. They're new and made to look old. But the boot space or trunk space in them is probably the equivalent of a Toyota Camry, maybe even less. So that's why I've never really considered that option. And it's great. You've got internet on the bus. It's really quiet. Everyone is respectful, and they've always just taken me up to the door of the hotel, or if the hotel that I'm staying in isn't on the route, it's within a 5-minute walk. And that's why I have one bag and one backpack. Really easy to get around. And while we're talking about bags, make sure that you have the ones with the 4 wheels on the bottom, not the 2 wheels, the 4 wheels. Makes a huge difference. Where do you actually stay? That's a really good question. And as I said, I've done this. I've stayed in different areas of Tokyo, and I rate the areas that I've stayed in and the areas that people like to stay in as good, better, and best. So let's start with the good. You might be online and you're looking at hotels and you go, wow, that hotel has got everything and it's really cheap and it's close to everything and it's in this place called Shinjuku. And yep, that is good, but it's not the better and it's not the best. Let me tell you why. Shinjuku is one of the more busy areas of Tokyo. It hosts the largest train station on Earth. Now, when you go to a train station, you have probably been to your local city's train station and it might have 4 exits. Shinjuku Station has 206 exits. It's a city within a city. I would highly recommend on your first trip to Tokyo to not stay in Shinjuku. You will get changed around and you will lose your bearings and you won't know where you are. I'm pretty good at reading maps and pretty good with a sense of direction. And the first few times that I was there, I lost my sense of bearings of where I was. So there are much better places to stay at a similar price where it won't be so overwhelming for you and you'll still get that Japanese experience. So let me talk about the second option of better. The better options are in 3 areas, depending on price. The more pricey one is in Shinagawa. Shinagawa is on the Yamanote line, the Yamanote train line, and there's so many lines in Tokyo. You'll see they're color-coded, and the Yamanote line is a circle, and it's got the green color, and it's the major train line in Tokyo that gets used the most. Shinjuku is on the Yamanote line, as is Shinagawa, but it's a much smaller place with quite a large train station, but a lot easier to navigate. The hotels there, particularly the Grand Prince hotels, are set in their own grounds with a lake and with Japanese traditional gardens. So quite pricey, but very, very nice. And you just walk down to the train station and it probably takes you 3 minutes to get there. And it's a beautiful walk through a garden, a Japanese garden, and a little lake with koi fish in it, and it's really grand. The second option, or the second part of better, is closer to Tokyo City itself, and that's in an area in Bunkyo Ward called Sudobashi. Sudobashi is an area where the Tokyo Dome is. So that is one of the large stadiums that hosts a lot of concerts, baseball games, and fairs. You know, like if you wanted to go to a craft fair, it would be held in the Tokyo Dome, along with a rock concert, you know, for Smashing Pumpkins or whatever. So really, really good. There's an amusement park as well right next to it, quite a small condensed amusement park. But the hotels there are the Tokyo Dome Hotel and the Richmond Hotel, of which I stayed in the Richmond. It was only a few months old when I stayed there, and faultless, completely faultless, absolutely great. Good price, near everything, near food, over the road from a shopping centre. Really, really convenient, and about a 250-metre walk to Sudobashi Station. So, yeah, really, really good. The third option, which tends to be my favourite at the minute of the middle ranking, the better ranking, is Minato. Minato is where the Australian Embassy is. Minato means port, and you are so close to so many things like the Tokyo Tower. Tokyo Tower is that one that looks like the Eiffel Tower, but it's orange. And you're kind of within a few train stops of Ginza as well. So you have incredible wealth, beautiful scenery, beautiful streetscapes, but lots of train stations to choose from. You're not on the Yamanote line as such, but you are close to Onarimon Station, which is a subway station, and Diamond Station, and Hamamatsucho Station. So you're in real good striking distance of those three. And I always try to go to Byron Bay Coffee Shop, which is at Hamamatsucho, and it's kind of like going back and sitting, in our local coffee shop here in Ipswich. And then you walk out on the street and you're surrounded by the Japan-ness of Japan. So, love that place, and I can't wait to get back there. The hotel that I normally stay in Hamamatsucho is the Hen-Na Hotel. You've probably heard of these hotels before. Hen-Na means weird, and the hotels are staffed ostensibly by robots. So the lobby has 2 robots there, and if you go to some other Hen-Na hotels, they also have a dinosaur that talks behind the counter. But this one is right next to Byron Bay Coffee in Hamamatsucho, and the rooms are small, like every hotel in Tokyo. Get used to that. You're not going to America where everything is big. You're going to Tokyo where everything is compact and small, but perfectly functional for what you need to do. Then we come to the best. The best by far, if you want to be in the action in Japan, in Tokyo, is Shibuya. We stayed in the Tokyu Rei, that's R-E-I Hotel, and it's not Tokyo Rei, it's Tokyu, T-O-K-Y-U, R-E-I. And Tokyu have a range of hotels and properties that they run. This was probably 300 meters away from the Shibuya Scramble crossing, where you see all of those millions of people cross at a pedestrian crossing in Japan. It's kind of the iconic place where people go to Japan. So I would highly recommend trying to stay as close as you can to the Shibuya crossing, because it's close to the iconic Shibuya station as well, and the stuff that they have built there for the Olympics is unbelievable. I went there one year and they were just sort of scratching around the foundations of a building. I went there a year to the day later, and there was like a 30-story building up that was complete. So that's just a fraction of what has gone on in the Shibuya area. So you'll pay for the privilege though of being in Shibuya. The Tokyu Rei is probably one of the more affordable ones, and very clean, very neat, very modern, but you go over to the Cerulean and expect to pay $1,000 or more a night. So it's that type of area, a real diverse area. So those are the places that I really would recommend staying. And there's a few schools of thought on, you know, how many hotels you stay in when you're there. I tend to try to do the hub and spoke method. In other words, you stay in one spot and you radiate out and do day trips and then come back to the same hotel because you have all your stuff in the hotel, and you know, collapse after you have a nice meal and rest and get up the next day and do it all again. So that's the way that I do it. But the trip that we had planned was the exact opposite of that, which I'll go into in future videos, but I'm just concentrating on Tokyo at this point. So what do you actually do when you're there? That's just so much fun, you know, when you're actually there. And I've just got some notes in front of me here. I try to break the 9 nights up into 3 lots of 3. So the first 3, I would call it city exploration. You are in the biggest city on earth, and the reason that I like going to Tokyo is that there is nothing else like it. Sure, I've been to New York. Sure, I've been to Hong Kong. Those are really nice cities, but in Hong Kong and New York, particularly New York, you are always getting hustled for, you're a tourist, people know that, and it's like you've got a big sign on your head that you're a tourist and that you've got money and you're a sucker, and everything is a tourist trap. I know that Tokyo is also has, you know, a lot of things for tourists to see, but you are never hassled. No one is ever hustling you for money. Everything is polite. Everything is done with so much class. That's probably the word for it. Everything is neat and clean. People are in a hurry, I get that. So if you're dawdling around, people will be quietly annoyed at you and try to get around you. But it's just it's hard to describe until you have been there. So the first 3 days, you really want to explore the city that you're in and just take in how vast it really is. So the things that I would recommend doing first is actually going to Shibuya and going to that scramble crossing and the maze of Japanese department stores like Parco, Loft, Muji, and just have a look at how this all works. Parco, you'll go down there in the stationery section and you'll be amazed at the magazines that are on sale there and the diverse range of interests that they cater for. Believe me, you know, if you have an interest in underwater basket weaving, there is probably a magazine for it in that shop. It's just extraordinary. The next thing you should do on that day is go up to Harajuku, which is only a couple of stations away. It's even a short walk away. But the first time ever you go there, I would probably recommend getting on the train and going up a couple of stops to Harajuku. Harajuku is the center of youth culture. Beautiful shops, wide roadways, and Tokyu Plaza has a rooftop garden, and that's just unmissable. You have to do that, go up the top of Tokyu Plaza, sit on the top, and on a clear day you can see out to Mount Fuji. And you go to Starbucks, and Starbucks is a really big thing over there, unfortunately. But what I've found is that coffee over there, they make the best coffee I've ever had in my life, but not Starbucks. Particularly around Shibuya and Harajuku has extraordinary coffee shops. So really, really good coffee. Also, Harajuku has the park, so big parks, temples, shrines, that sort of thing. So you'll see that as soon as you get off the train. So absolutely, just it's an eye opener, and you can just walk around this park for free. It's vast, and you can just see what people do. The other reason that, I'll just mention this now, the other reason that I travel to Tokyo on a Tuesday to get there on Tuesday night is so I do things midweek, because if for the first time you went to Tokyo and you got there on Friday night and your first day there was Saturday, you would be shocked at how many people there are out on a Saturday and a Sunday. Try to get your bearings on a weekday, because the weekends are the time that people get out of their homes, get out, do shopping, go on picnics. So the trains are a lot more crowded on the weekends. The third thing of our first 3 days of city exploration is a theme park. And I know that you know, there's a kid in every one of us, but you've got to go to Disneyland or Disney Sea. I've been to both many times, but if I had to pick one, I would go to Disney Sea. It's adjacent to Disneyland, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but Disney Sea is more for, I think it'll cater more for adults. Disneyland will cater more for children. So keep that in mind. And it is a long day. It is a really long day. I think it opens from memory at 10. So make sure you're there at 10 because the rides fill up immediately. So take full advantage of the fast pass system and know which rides that you want to go on, and it'll be a lot easier for you. You can buy your tickets online for that as well, so I would really encourage people to do that. The second of the 3 days, so we've done our first 3 days of city exploration. So what we're going to do is country exploration. So the first one is, these are bullet train centric as well. So the first one is a place called Karazawa, and it's up in the mountains. John Lennon used to live there with Yoko, and it is a beautiful kind of a German themed place up in the mountains, and it's about, I'm thinking a bit over an hour, maybe an hour and a half out of Tokyo via bullet train. And that leaves via Shinagawa and Tokyo stations. So really good. There's a big outlet shopping center there. You're at the foot of mountains where they had the Olympics, the Winter Olympics. So there's like ski jumps and everything behind the shopping center. But the highlight of it is the village over the other side of the train line. And there's onsens there, and you can rent a bicycle and go for drives or rides in the countryside. Really, really good. Love it. Second one is Nikko. Nikko is another full day trip, bullet train, and it's very shrine and temple oriented. And it's a UNESCO heritage site built in 1636. So it is proper, it is real, and it's in the middle of a giant forest. And I've never seen anything like it. Just Google Nikko, Nikko, Japan, and you'll see what I mean. Third one is Niigata. Niigata is on the other side of Japan, and there's not a hell of a lot in Niigata, but just going there, going through the width of Japan and going through the mountains and everything, it's just a really relaxing day, and it's a relaxing way to wind down from the 2 hectic days that you would have had before. So Niigata, N-I-I-G-A-T-A, Niigata. So the last of the 3 days is urban exploration. So it's not city, it's not country, it's kind of in between. Not a little bit country, a little bit rock and roll. You've got to see Yokohama. Yokohama is about 40 minutes south of Tokyo, and it really is the city of the future. Part of it is called Minato Mirai, and that means Port City of the Future. And it's just a beautiful street, a big city with wide streets, very European, or very Western actually. You've got to see Yokohama, all right? And lots of tall buildings that you can go up on the top of that look like robots, an amusement park, lots of stuff to see there. And the next one is Kamakura and Kita Kamakura, another shrine type place, very similar to Nikko, but a lot closer to Tokyo. Kamakura and Kita Kamakura are about an hour south of Tokyo, and you actually go past Yokohama to do that. But I wouldn't recommend seeing Yokohama and the Kamakuras in one day. You don't have enough time to do that properly. Beautiful shrines, beautiful temples, and at Kamakura you have beaches. Different to the beaches we have here, but just Google Kamakura, K-A-M-A-K-U-R-A, and Kita Kamakura. Kita means north, Kamakura, so really good. And the last day, really, I put down to consolidation of the whole trip. You normally try to leave your hotel by about 1 o'clock to get to the airport by about 3, because your plane leaves that night. If you can leave a little bit later, great, but generally the daytime buses that go back to the airport are a little bit fewer and far between, going to the airport rather than coming from, for some reason. So I use those consolidation days for just get up late that morning, have a nice breakfast, look around, do any last minute sort of shopping things that you want to do, because you always have your eye on something, don't you, when you go overseas and you think, oh, you know, I might buy that. And there are so many times that I've gone back and said, stuff it, and I'm going to buy it. So that's how I do it. Just a final point that I've missed on currency conversion. The best thing that you can ever do is not worry about the banks over there. You go to a 7-Eleven and they have an automatic teller machine that spits out currency, but it's a foreign exchange teller machine. Their rates are way better than you get here. If you do have any money left over, I would highly recommend that when you go to Narita Airport, there's a currency exchange place there, and it seems to be a government-run one, so the rates are excellent. They're not the rip-off rates through the ones that we get used to in Australian airports. Okay, and in Japanese airports, everything is pretty much the same price as what it is in a normal shop in Tokyo. In other words, it's cheap. So their airports are something that I aspire to having over here, because you get back here and you buy like a $5 can of Coke and you go, we just get so ripped off. So that's it, ladies and gents. I really hope that you've gained something from that. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. But as I said, I have been to Tokyo so many times, I can probably go there and come back blindfolded. So if you'd like these sort of videos, please consider subscribing, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.